Welcome to Mach 10 Sports in this February 12th, 2024 episode. Appreciate you joining us here today on the SEC Unfiltered platform. We've been going about this for 2 weeks. Again, I'm your host, Dave Shoemate from Mach 10 Sports, worked in college football around the SEC for 10 years. So we're going to talk football, basketball, baseball for you guys that are new to us, just starting to see the show that I use the platform here on Unfiltered, SEC Unfiltered on Monday and Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Central. But let's get right to it. We got a good guest. Let me first send him the link to the show before we really get rocking and rolling here. Copy the link. I'm ready to rock and roll. Perfect. All right, guys. Again, welcome to this episode on February 12th. Again, I'm your host, Dave Shoemate, Mach 10 Sports. Let's get right to it, guys. If you missed the Super Bowl yesterday, we're not going to talk in detail about the Super Bowl. A lot of random SEC East players, huh? A lot of random SEC East players out there. I mean, Mecole Hardman had the touchdown catch, Georgia player, Elbert County. I remember recruiting him when we were there. Great kid. Been on and off with the Jets, with the Chiefs now, was with the Chiefs originally. Juwan Jennings, who Tennessee fans are familiar with, had the big catch. Georgia fans are familiar with from the 2016, the catch. Then Chris Conley making some big plays on special teams. The former Chief making some plays for his new team, the San Francisco 49ers. So a lot of random, just from an SEC standpoint, that's what we're talking about. A lot of random SEC players there. A little mixture of Georgia, Tennessee, SEC East. I liked it. A lot of names familiar with. I was at Georgia with Chris Conley and Mecole Hardman, so it was fun to see that. We're going to have a great guest. I just sent him the link. As you can tell, things probably aren't well in the Bluegrass. Things are not well for Big Blue Nation right now. So Justin Rowland from Cats Illustrated to Rivals Company will join us to talk Kentucky basketball. Again, Justin Rowland from Cats Illustrated. Talk John Calipari. How can this team bounce back? Can it be turned around at this point? They're locked into the NCAA tournament, but can it be turned around at this point? What would it take for Cal to maybe, I don't know if he's going to walk away from $33 million with his buyout, but maybe some contract negotiations with Mitch Barnhart, something like that. We'll get to that. Justin has ears to the ground, boots to the ground, ears everywhere. Does a phenomenal job covering Kentucky, so he will join us at around 7:15. Then we're going to go around the SEC. Ryan Grubb, and it looks like offensive line coach Scott Huff will both be going back to Seattle to join Mike McDonald in the new staff of the Seattle Seahawks. Again, Alabama offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb on Friday announced that. I'm about to talk about that here in just a minute. Again, on the hardwood this week, if you're a road team, you might as well just stay home. Don't even waste the trip on the pregame meal, the flight, the hotel. It is so hard to win in this league on the road, how deep it is, 1 through 10. I mean, I would even cut it off. I mean, it's not real difficult this year, and it's crazy to say this. It's not that difficult to go play at Bud Walton this year. It's not that difficult to go play at Memorial this year. And it's really not that difficult to go play at Missouri this year. And usually Memorial traditionally and Bud Walton are hostile environments. Everybody, I would say even LSU's where that cutoff is, where they're significantly better at home. So it's a bloodbath out there on the road. I took 4 favorites this past weekend. I thought Auburn would get it done. I totally regretted that. Tennessee losing to A&M. I thought Tennessee would get it done because the defense travels. I took Bama on the road at LSU. They went out and won. They got the job done. And then who was the other one? Mississippi State at Missouri. I took that. So I took 4 road teams, which is crazy. Like I said, it's a bloodbath out there. So we'll review the weekend, preview the midweek action, and then we're going to go over my SEC basketball power rankings that have South Carolina fans have been getting after me. They haven't liked it that I'm teasing it. You can go look at my Twitter page. It's already out there, but I have the Gamecocks at 4th. So we'll go into that here in a little bit in the later of the show. But just getting started off around the SEC. SEC baseball starts Friday. It's going to be fun. We'll talk SEC baseball hard on Thursday. But again, it's that time of year, man. Football's over, guys. It's over. Don't be discouraged. We got basketball. We're getting close to March. We got SEC baseball starting up. But again, go subscribe the SEC Unfiltered channel. Go to Mach 10 Sports, our YouTube page. We always go upload the episode after this on that page as well. Go subscribe. Tell us where we can get better as a channel as well. But again, I appreciate you joining us. But let's get to it around the SEC. Alabama basketball wearing some different unis. I'll just share my screen with you. Wearing some different uniforms for the Texas A&M game on this upcoming Saturday. Kind of tell me what you think in the chat if you want to. So this is the video that it's kind of some retro. So the University of Alabama is going back to athletics to embrace the block A, the old school kind of 90s look. You remember Alabama back then, the Gene Stallings, Funky Potion, the football people back there. I like it. I love the pants. I love the Alabama block logo. Something's missing with the jersey. I like it, but I can't put my I want to see what this looks like on TV, what it looks like on the floor with the jerseys tucked in before I give it a full grade. So if I get a full, on a scale of 1 through 10 right now, I'd give this the top's a little incomplete. I love the shorts there. I love the logo. Bring that up. I'll come back with this on Monday after they see this, after I see this on TV, see what it looks like on the court on Saturday at 11 a.m. against Texas A&M. A little retro night. Just wanted to bring that up for you real fast. I don't know. Continuing to go around the SEC here, everybody. Florida is extended the contract to head baseball coach Kevin O'Sullivan, legend around the league. Right before his 17th season at helm for the program, Swamp 247 reported O'Sullivan is now contracted through the end of the 2033 season, which would be his 26th season in charge of the program. O'Sullivan's average annual salary will increase from about $1.2 million to $1.8. So his annual salary will range from $1.75 to $1.93. The new deal makes O'Sullivan the SEC's second highest paid behind only, can you guess? Tim Corbin at Vanderbilt. Not a shocker there, but much needed raise. Again, they lost in the National Championship Series game 2 to LSU last year. So it was a fun series. Kevin O'Sullivan done a phenomenal job since his time coming over as the pitching coach from Clemson. So I like what Kevin O'Sullivan's been doing with that Florida program. Just wanted to bring that up for you here. And then just initially, SEC over-under win total was released by FanDuel. Just want to quickly go over that for you here. Just real briefly before we continue to move on. Just wanted to go over that. But here, I will go over this more in detail on Thursday's episode, like where my true thoughts, but just wanted to go over them real fast. Alabama opens up at 9.5. Initial impressions would say go under. Big adjustment, tougher schedule. I'd go under here for the Tide. Arkansas, 5.5. That's interesting. I thought it's about right there. That's tough. If it's going to be 6 or 5, and gun to my head right now, again, we're going to go more in depth on Thursday. I would go under here. Auburn, 6.5. I would go over. I like the schedule again, just like Auburn's schedule last year was favorable when I thought they underachieved. But I like Auburn over 6.5 here. Florida, about the same as it was last year, if I remember right. Over under 5.5. I like the that's tough. That's tough. I'll go under. Georgia, 10.5. Initial impression over. Kentucky, 6.5. Initial impression. Yeah, let's go under as of right now. LSU, initial impression, 9.5 under. Until they get that interior defensive line role. They got 2 scholarship players, also 3 top guys in Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, Jordan Jefferson. I'm going under. I think they have 3 losses, but that interior defensive line for sure. Mississippi State, 4.5. Woo, that's tough because I see 4. That's what I see is 4. So I'm going to go under. Missouri, 9.5. I'm going to go under. I don't think they repeat, especially if they – we'll talk about it here with Ryan Grubb. Maybe lose Kirby Moore than their offensive line coach. Oklahoma, a little lower than I was expecting. 6.5. I'm going to go over there. Ole Miss, over under 9.5. I'll go over. South Carolina, over under 5.5. Initial impression under. Tennessee, 8.5. This is my favorite on the board right now. I'm going to go over, hammer this one home. Granted, my favorite on the board last year, Vanderbilt, over under 3.5 wins. Didn't hit, didn't come close. That was my favorite. So as we stand right now, February 12th, Tennessee over under 8.5 is my favorite in the league. Remember, we'll go in more detail on Thursday. A&M, Mike Elko's first year, FanDuel has them opening up at 8.5, the under right there. And then I got to give you my prediction there. I'll go under. I like 8, right at 8. God, Vegas is so good at this. It's so those half points just kill you. Then Vanderbilt over under 2.5. You know what? They didn't hit it last year. They'll probably hit it this year. I think they'll get to 3. So I'm going to go that. All 16 of those teams, just wanted to briefly talk about that. Again, we're not going to go in depth right now, but just wanted to hit that target before we get Justin on here in about 5 minutes. But again, continuing around the SEC, Ryan Grubb, offensive coordinator from Alabama, and offensive line coach Scott Huff, who both came over with Kalen DeBoer from Washington, heading back to Seattle, but not returning to Washington, in case you've been living under a rock. since Friday. But again, this is our first episode since it, so we're going to talk about it. They're going back to Seattle with Mike Macdonald, new head coach. Interesting hire there. So he's a first-time head coach. He's still going to call the defense, he says. Then he's going to go hire a first-time offensive coordinator in the league. It's interesting, but hey, that's not the point of this conversation. But Scott Huff, the offensive line coach, has not officially been announced yet by the Seahawks. But what does Alabama do at the offensive coordinator position and the offensive line position? That's the next big question there. Kalen DeBoer's had to think this was a potential option because he had a feel. But I think Ryan Grubb was trying to get the head coaching job there. Didn't get it at Washington. Kind of felt like he never really wanted to be there. I know he said it at the post-signing day, I'm your OC. People were kind of giving him hell for that. But he was the OC at Alabama then. He didn't have the job offer from the Seahawks. That's just the way this industry works, guys. It's just the way it works. Don't hold that personal against him. That's who he currently was dealing with. Some names to keep an eye on here, though, is do you go hire Missouri's Kirby Moore at the offensive coordinator position and Brandon Jones at the offensive line position? Both at Missouri right now. Kirby Moore, we talked about it last episode, is very familiar with Kalen DeBoer, was his passing game coordinator, wide receivers coach at Fresno State before he went to Washington, before DeBoer went to Washington. So there's some familiarity there. Hearing Kirby Moore wants to come, but I think he wants to bring Brandon Jones at the offensive line position. It'll be interesting to see what DeBoer wants to do there. I think that's the bigger issue. I posted it on a TikTok the other day, TikTok green screen, how I think Ryan Grubb, don't get me, big loss, familiarity for DeBoer. It'll be interesting to see how that translates. I think that's okay. Offensive line, that's a bigger loss to me. The Scott Huff loss is bigger just because it's such an important position from a development standpoint, being on the same page, having that camaraderie with your kids. That's one of the more important positions where you got to have a relationship with the offensive line coach. Those guys love playing for those passionate offensive line coaches that truly care about it. Offensive line coaches coach the hell out of their players, guys. I'm telling you, hard as hell on them. Probably second, right next to defensive line. Rodney Garner on the defensive line was probably one of the harder coaches I've been around, but loved his players to death. Herb Hand on the offensive line coached his players to death. Jim Turner, when I was at A&M, coached the shit out of his players too. That's a key position, big relationship position there. That's one option I could see them going. Again, Missouri, Kirby Moore at the offensive coordinator position, Brandon Jones. Then we'd be talking about what's Missouri going to do. But hold up, he could go internally, promote tight end coach Nick Sheridan that came over with him from Washington, or he could go with the wide receivers coach that came over from Washington, Jamarcus Shepard. But I've also heard Ryan Grubb wants to bring Jamarcus Shepard with him at Washington. So I don't know, maybe Jamarcus Shepard goes to DeBoer's like, hey, if you don't promote me to OC, I'm going to go with Grubb and Huff back to Seattle to the NFL. That's what I want to do. And then finally, the third option, again, hearing Missouri's Kirby Moore with the offensive line coach Brandon Jones, does he promote within with Nick Sheridan or Jamarcus Shepard, or does he just call it himself in the first year? Some guys that have called it before that have been head coaches, Steve Sarkisian, Jimbo Fisher did. Lord knows we know that. Lincoln Riley, Josh Heupel has a little mixed in. Billy Napier says he's doing it this year. Norvell called for the first few years at Florida State, then took back. Chip Kelly, Jeff Lebby will at Mississippi State, which I agree with that one. Because Mississippi State I don't think is going to be very good this year. So they got to have some excitement. So for his first year, he needs to be very involved in like, hey, you know what? We may not go win 6 games at Mississippi State this year, but we're going to put an exciting offensive product out there. So it's different. We're comparing apples and oranges. Lane Kiffin with Charlie Weiss Jr. I think Charlie Weiss Jr. calls it. Lane can kind of nick stuff as he wants, but it is Charlie Weiss Jr. Hugh Freeze, depending on what day of the week does he call it. I mean, if he's not too busy recruiting, I guess he has time to game plan. When the offense is going well, he's involved in the game plan. If it's not, he wasn't really involved. Hugh Freeze, I don't know. Does he take over this year? Potentially. Ryan Day did. Now he's bringing in Chip Kelly. Brought in Bill O'Brien, now Chip Kelly. Jim Harbaugh did at Stanford in the first few years at Michigan, then he changed. I'm personally not a huge fan of this. If you're a head coach, I think you need to operate like a CEO. There's too many things going on in college football, too much to just overall manage in today's society, in today's college football landscape ecosystem, where I think the head coach needs to be locked in, needs to be completely locked in on the organization. I mean, you're running a multi-billion or $1 million industry. Sorry, not B. I'm talking about a million. You don't need, I mean, how many coaches have really had true success calling it? You got to be, I think that's, I worked at straight hand. I saw it from Jimbo Fisher. every day I saw it from Jimbo Fisher. He only focused on the offense. He really didn't have a pulse on Mike Elko and them on the defense. You need to have a coach that's truly involved. Obviously, he's going to lean to offense or defense, or maybe even special teams, but you have to have some kind of pulse on the overall program. Too much going on with NIL recruiting, to call it. I personally think you go with the promotion for a year. Maybe you're involved. Then you hand it over when you get more comfortable. And that's where I think that's the biggest loss with Ryan Grubb is familiarity, where Kalen DeBoer doesn't have to hold his hand. He knows what's expected. But again, I think the Scott Huff loss on the offensive line's more of an issue. Who they hire as an offensive line coach is going to be a bigger issue to me than the actual loss of Ryan Grubb. So just wanted to go over that before we get our guy Justin Rowland in here to talk a little Kentucky basketball. He's actually in here right now, so let's bring him on. Justin, what's going on, man?
Not much, Dave. Thanks for having me on, man. I enjoy your stuff.
I appreciate you getting on with me. But again, like I told everybody before the show, so we got Justin Rowland over here from Cat Illustrated from Rivals.com over here. Give him the follow at Rowland Rivals, correct, Justin?
That's right.
So, Justin, give me just kind of the landscape. Again, Kentucky coming off 3 losses in a row at Rupp Arena. Yeah. What's kind of the feel in Lexington right now regarding the basketball program? Can this be turned around? Can the season kind of be salvaged to some extent?
I think it's more complicated than most people from the outside looking in think. Sure, it looks terrible right now. And Calipari had a lot of detractors around the program coming into this season. So you would think it would just be fever pitch hysteria, signs in his yard, selling the house. You know, that happened to Tubby. His popularity has taken a major hit. But people understand this team still has the firepower that if they catch lightning in a bottle, they could still make a deep tournament run. It doesn't look like that's going to happen right now. And it's not going to get any easier. They got Ole Miss, they got at Auburn, they got Alabama and Rupp. They got a lot of games that could cause the bottom to fall out. But because the ceiling has looked so impressive when this team has looked good, I think people have given them a long leash and have been willing to forgive a lot as long as they peak at the right time. But Dave, I think we're at the point now where I came into December, January saying Cal's teams get better on defense. It's going to happen. They're going to get better. But at this point, I think they got to prove it. The assumption has to be gone. They've been bad enough on defense that they have to prove it before you think it's going to happen.
Would you say, just as we stand right now, let's just say they kind of finish 5th or 6th in the league to wrap it up. They win a game in the tournament. They're similar to last year, first weekend exit the NCAA tournament. Would you say this is Cal's biggest disappointment of a team in his tenure at Kentucky?
If they only win one tournament game this year, it might be his last year at Kentucky. And that could be the buyout goes down every single year. And I think even people close to Cal came into this year knowing he's intent on finishing the contract, which would put him through most of the rest of another decade. But they understood that if this year did not go well, then it could be the end. And you also have to consider, how much does Calipari want to put himself through? I mean, he's a Hall of Fame coach that's been on top of the mountain, and he's kind of been beating his head against the wall for several years in a row. Does he want to keep putting himself through it when he's made so much money in recent years? But again, this team still has great potential, and they just got to get into the tournament and avoid the worst possible path. One game, they got to win more than one game. A lot of fans are thinking it's Final Four bust. That's how despairing they've been.
And what is that buyout? Is it $33 million? Is that what it is, around there?
I think it was about 40 or 50 coming into this season, but it goes down by, I want to say, 7, 8, or 9 million per year. So I mean, the idea of buying out a basketball coach for that amount is like a non-starter most places. It isn't even a non-starter at Kentucky, but the further along we get, the further removed from Final Fours we've been. And you, if they lose to Ole Miss, that would be 4 straight home losses. That's like unheard of in Rupp Arena. It's their worst home losing streak since 1960. It just doesn't happen.
Then what? You're going to, I know it's not at Rupp, but then you're going to Auburn on Saturday.
Yeah. Even if they beat Ole Miss, it's going to start right back up again if they lose at Auburn, and they're 1-5 in their last 6 trips to Auburn. So pretty grim right now.
Yeah. So your thoughts on the youth movement here? So we've seen Cal kind of dip into the transfer. Obviously got Trey Mitchell this year with Huggins retiring. Mm-hmm. Obviously Oscar Sheboy's been brought in from West Virginia before too. What's your kind of thoughts on the narrative in college basketball that like youth can't win in the tournament? Are you kind of like, I feel like that's just kind of like an easy, lazy narrative out there, or do you think there's some truth?
There is some truth to it for sure, and there may be a lot of truth to it. But my thing is, there's really only 2 programs in the country that have tried to do the one-and-done thing like Kentucky has, Kentucky and Duke.
Yeah.
So you've got 350 programs that are trying to do it one way. And you got two programs basically that are trying to do it the other way. So if you say Kentucky and Duke only have 2 titles in the last 12, 13, 14, whatever, it still doesn't tell you a whole lot. But I will say when you watch these recent Final Fours and you see the way the game is with everything spread out and all the outside shooting and whatnot, it really does seem like youth comes with more of a penalty now. You're better off with a more experienced. But they thought they had some experience coming into this season. The real issue has been defense and toughness.
Do you see any of that getting fixed potentially, or you think it's kind of like, hey, we're already in February, mid-February. They kind of are what they are.
The problem is they had these 3 7-footers, and they had to work a couple of them in. They had Bradshaw to start the season. They've got a Vicic and Onyenso that they've worked in. But none of the big men are really that interesting. They struggle on defense. They're kind of one-dimensional players, whatever it is. Each of them have their own traits. But what made this team interesting was the sheer number of explosive, great shooting guards. You could put 3, 4 excellent shooters on the court together at a time, and the more big men Calipari puts on the court, the less interesting that core of the team becomes.
Yeah.
But it's not that simple either, because those great guards that score so well are pretty bad on defense. I mean, DJ Wagner's okay, Antonio Reeves okay, but Dillingham and Shepard, the 2 guys that have been electric, really bad on defense this season. So the answers are not obvious. That's why Cal's saying we just got to get 10% better on defense. Very bite-sized goal, but that tells you how bad it's been.
All right, Justin, appreciate you joining us. I'm going to put you on the spot here real fast before we get you out of here again. Justin Rowland joining us over from Cats Illustrated on the Rivals Network. What do you think, Justin? At the end of the year here in March, will he be the head basketball coach at Kentucky heading to the 24-25 season, in your opinion, with the information we have at hand tonight on February 12th?
I'm going to say no, and my guess is going to be that Cal rides it out. I don't know how this year finishes. They play defense like a round of 32 team. I'm going to say they lose in the round of 32, and he makes the choice himself to move on to something else. He's got a son coaching at Vanderbilt. He's got a daughter at Vanderbilt. Nashville's probably going to be a great place to live for him one day. I'm not saying that needs to happen, because really there's still not another coach out there who can just put it in a blender and give you a totally new shot the next season. But I don't think he's going to put himself through it again.
Do you see any chances, I hate to speculate with him still sitting in that chair. Do you see any chance of maybe another SEC coach maybe moving to Lexington, or you think it would go outside? Maybe you see the Scott Drew name thrown around a lot from Baylor.
Scott Drew is the kind of guy that Kentucky Athletics Director Mitch Barnhart would hire. He checks a lot of the boxes. He's a religious guy. He's a guy that gets family and the kind of program that Barnhart would want. But there's real questions as to whether Drew would leave Baylor, because a lot of the things that he likes about Baylor are in line with the reasons Mitch would like him at Kentucky. If it's not Scott Drew, then you look at Nate Oates would probably be in that conversation. I don't think Muss would. I don't think Beard would, certainly. I don't think Pearl would, guys that have been floated by fans. But I think Oates would certainly be very interesting.
Yeah, I see what you mean there with Scott Drew. I mean, he's won it all already at Baylor. So it's like he can do whatever he wants to accomplish there. You're right. It'll be interesting with Oates and that buyout. I mean, Kentucky would have to pony. I'm not saying they couldn't, but you have to essentially pony out close to what? After it's all said and done, 30, 35, 40 minutes after paying Cal.
It's a lot. It'd be a lot.
Yeah, it would be
probably go in a different direction. Probably in a different direction if it comes down to the buyout, yeah.
Well, Justin, I appreciate you joining us, man. I know you got a lot going on, especially busy this time of year with basketball. I'm sure I'm not the only one hitting you up, because you do a phenomenal job covering the Wildcats. Again, guys, Justin Rowland from CatsIllustrated.com on Rivals. Go check them out. Justin, I appreciate you taking the time tonight, man.
Thanks, Dave. Let's do it again, man.
Let's do it, brother. Appreciate you.
Take care.
Again, Justin Rowland does a phenomenal job for the Cats. If you want to anything, football, basketball, baseball, follow Justin. Does a phenomenal job. Thought he'd be a good guest to get on, to get some boots on the ground from a Kentucky basketball standpoint. Again, we're not used to Kentucky losing 3 straight games at Rupp. We're not. And again, you heard Justin talk about it. They got a tough game against a veteran Ole Miss team that can score, and Kentucky can't defend. That's tomorrow night. And then they go to Neville Arena on Saturday at the Jungle against Auburn. Yeah. Again, you heard him, 1-5 in their last 6. Kentucky struggles there. Yeah. But we're going to continue on it again. Kentucky taking the 89 We're going to get immediately to that one. 85 lost to Gonzaga. Again, 3 straight losses for the Cats. Last play, been scrutinized a lot. Apparently, he calls that play box cow, and everyone knows when they get into that, the lob play. Reed Shepherd underthrew the lob, and Kentucky hadn't been great with their lob passes this year. If you watch a lot of Kentucky basketball, we talk about SEC basketball, so we've obviously talked about the blue blood of the league. Yeah, it hadn't been great. It almost has to be a perfectly executed play. Everybody knows that he wants to get that on that backside lob pass to one of his bigger guys. Gonzaga, Mark Few, one of the best coaches in the country, knew that too. Frustrating loss if you're a big Kentucky fan, a part of Big Blue Nation. This team just doesn't guard. We just talked about it. 3 stops in the final 10 minutes on Saturday. Only 3 stops in the final 10 minutes of the game Saturday. What are we doing? That's what Justin said. That's what teams that lose in the round of 32 do. That's what concerns me a little bit about Alabama. When they face some bad matchups, you got to be able to guard. They struggle a little bit. Just like Alabama guarding bigs, but again, their guards can't cover. Alabama scored 9 the other day, but they gave up 92. We still got a long season, though. I mean, still a lot to turn around. But if we're talking about a 6 to 8 seed in a first weekend exit, I mean, we asked Justin, what happens? Cal's ego's, I think, too big to just straight up walk away. So unless him and Mitch Barnhart come up with some deal, I don't know if I see him just walking away from that. I wouldn't. I'd make you fire me, and I'd go and you pay me $33 million. But again, who knows what Cal's thinking? Like Justin said, he has a son who's been on his staff at Kentucky before, who Kentucky fans are familiar with. He coaches currently with Stackhouse over at Vanderbilt. Stevie Rowland chatting in here. I know I'm late on this. Just started watching. Oklahoma is in the SEC soon. They had 6 players in the Super Bowl, 4 on Chiefs and 2 on the 49ers. No, you're absolutely right. I was just talking right off the bat, though, just talking about the SEC East. We had a lot of unknown SEC East guys or guys people wouldn't remember. Like, dude, he's like Chris Conley, Miko Hardman, Juwan Jennings. No, I understand. We talked about Oklahoma here just a minute ago. They're over-under win total. Thought it'd be a little over, but appreciate the comment there, Stevie. Also, going back to this Kentucky matchup, again, Ole Miss this week. Ole Miss can score. Bunch of mid-range shots. Matthew Morrell, Juju Murray. It's a tough matchup for a team that can't guard like Kentucky. And then at Auburn, that explains itself right there. But are we getting to the point where this relationship ran its course? I think that's kind of the feel. Both parties. Cal doesn't feel wanted. The fans and boosters are kind of like, what the hell, man? What have we been doing? We've been underachieving here. We hadn't been past the first week in the tournament in 6-7 years at this point. What's going on? Next, I asked Justin who he thought could be some potential replacements. Yeah, I think you got 3 of them right here in the SEC. Nate Oates, Bruce Pearl, and Chris Beard. Again, Mitch Barnhart, conservative, true Chrisman. Probably Chris Beard's past with the domestic violence. Probably not. School at Kentucky, you're going to get scrutinized there. Ole Miss, no one even talked about Ole Miss hiring Chris Beard. I was one of the people like, yeah, hire him. If you're Mitch Beard, if you're Ole Miss, hire him. I know Keith Carter didn't want to hire him, but I think the president at Ole Miss is a big basketball guy and pushed it. Again, they released it the day of the NCAA tournament started. No one even noticed. Now Ole Miss is probably going to be in the tournament. And everybody's like, what a hire. No one even said anything. But in Kentucky, you're under a microscope. So I get it. Bruce Pearl, a little older. I think he's hoping he stays at Auburn and Stephen Pearl, his son, gets the assistant job. So I honestly I don't think Bruce would more so turn him down than, hey, I'm 63, 64. I want my son to be the next guy here. They're probably going to build a statue outside of Neville. Bruce, why would he leave? Scott Drew, I think he has everything he could have at Baylor. I don't know. I mean, Nate Oates will probably be the most likely to take it, but his buyout is ridiculous. 18, 20 grand plus the 35, 40 Justin was talking about they're going to pay Cal. It's expensive. I think Nate Oates is winning big there. I mean, the guy's recruiting for a top 6 classes at Alabama. They've won the SEC 2 out of the last 3 years. Tournament and SEC regular season. They're tied for first with South Carolina right now, trying to go win 3 out of 4. Nate Oates is one of the best basketball coaches in the country now. I don't blame him, but just is the cost worth the reward? Could they maybe go get somebody else? I've seen people mention Billy Donovan, but Billy Donovan hadn't coached college basketball in 2 years. The landscape has changed drastically. So that's one there. I saw someone mention Dan Hurley. Why would he leave UConn? I don't get that one either. I think the 3 main candidates, I think those 4 I talked about, Nate Oates, Scott Drew, Bruce Pearl, and Chris Beard, I think the ones you're going to hear about. Maybe not as much Beard, because like I mentioned, but still. Moving on to the other games of the weekend. Let's bring it up. Let me share the screen here for you. Just want to talk a little bit of Kentucky. I know it's been talked about ad nauseum, but I just wanted to bring it up. So here is Saturday's slate. Thank you, SEC.com, SECsports.com. Alabama, again, getting the 109-92 win against LSU. Latrell Wrightsell just went off on this one. This LSU was up 1 with 9 minutes left, and Alabama went on a tirade, 23-6 run to put the game away. But that's what Alabama does. They're almost a tidal wave, no pun with the Crimson Tide, but they're a tide. They'll go score on you and go like, gosh, we were up 1, now we're down 15. What happened? Well, they hit back-to-back threes. They'll get a steal and a dunk. Defense leads to points on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, Alabama, they needed this win. They have a bye week this week. They play Texas A&M at home on Saturday. They're off the middle of the week. Those are the kind of games, though, with the 4 teams really competing for the SEC, South Carolina, Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee. Can't go drop those games on the road against teams you're better than. But, man, Alabama puts up 100, but 30. That was their third time in the last 4 matchups against LSU they have. But Alabama getting a much-needed win. South Carolina staying tied for first place with Alabama getting a 75-60 win at home against Vanderbilt. Yeah, a little sluggish in the first half for South Carolina, but to be expected. It was to be expected. I mean, South Carolina is just a nitty-gritty team, best defensive team in the country right now, or in the league, I should say, right now. But again, I liked what South Carolina did. Vanderbilt just not shooting with 33% from 3, 48% from the field. Just not a lot of points there for Vanderbilt. Only 60 points. Again, our guy, Colin Murray-Bowles, just doing probably the best freshman in the league right now. This guy's really doing it right now. South Carolina, we'll go over the power rankings here in a minute. People are going to give me crap. They are. I like them at 4th, though. But again, there's a lot of things to like. These are the games South Carolina would maybe drop in the past, but they did not. These are games similar. You can't lose to teams that you're better than. They're better than Vanderbilt. Struggle in the first half, early morning game, but they took care of business the second half. So I like what Carolina did there. Auburn, Florida. I thought this was the most intriguing matchup of Saturday's slate. Florida getting the 81-65 win. Kind of a sleeper game. Auburn coming off a big win at home against Alabama. Kind of sense that I picked Auburn. But again, Florida's one of those teams, guys. I'm telling y'all, do not be surprised if the Gators make it to the Sweet 16 into the second weekend of the tournament. They have that much offensive firepower. I mean, between Riley Kugel, Walter Clayton III, both went for 22 and 20. Zion Poulin going for 19. They got some big guys, some mismatches. Handel Gotten down there, Alex Condon down there. I mean, this is a team. What was the rebound difference here? 43. Yeah, 43-27 they whipped up on them. This game was, I think Florida got up 15-2 right out of the gate, 13-2. So this game was almost over right when it was tipped. Bruce Pearl mentioned Florida had a bye week before this one. He didn't like how they had a bye week and they got to stay at home. Auburn had to play midweek, didn't travel. I get it. But that's not why they lost. Again, Florida's a tough matchup. That's why I think Alabama may drop one of these games to Florida. They still got to play Florida twice. So I think Alabama has the toughest schedule left of the 4 teams, like I said, between South Carolina, Tennessee, Auburn, really competing for that league title. But again, this is one that got out of hand real quick, got away from Auburn. Kind of saw it, but a big week for Auburn coming up. They host they're home twice against 2 really good teams in South Carolina and Kentucky. I think they need to get both. But again, Florida getting a massive 81-65 win. We talked about Gonzaga getting the 89-85 win against Kentucky. Arkansas getting the 78-75 win. Again, another close game, another close loss for Mike White and his Georgia Bulldog team. Kind of felt like when Arkansas needed a bucket, they kind of got one either from L. Ellis or Shamon Mark. It just kind of felt like a Keon Minifield would go get a big basket. For whatever reason, it just kind of like Arkansas was like, Arkansas is going to win this game. I picked Arkansas to win this. Just kind of felt like until I see Georgia win a close game, I'm just not going to believe it. I'm just not going to believe it. I can't believe it. But, yeah, it's getting a little too late for Georgia, in my opinion. This game specifically, that's what it kind of came down to. Georgia would make their runs, and Arkansas would just go get a quick basket, get a much-needed victory when they had to. But Arkansas getting the 78-75 win. Another big one, probably the second most intriguing matchup. Again, A&M getting the 85-69 win against Tennessee. A&M unusually shooting well. It didn't even look like the A&M team. I mean, they almost shot 40% from 3, but they started off like 7 for 10. Again, they go as far as Boots Radford, Wade Taylor take them. Boots Radford went for 27. Wade Taylor went for 25. Just an unbelievable night for both of them. And they're a different team at home. I mean, how many free throws did they shoot? 25. Well, both teams got 25, Tennessee and A&M. So not a big disparity in the free throw margin. Rebounds here, though, 43-35. It's a big difference against a team that really prides himself from physicality and getting boards. But again, just A&M shot really well, played really well. Probably their best game I've seen A&M play from top to bottom all season. All season. In a game they kind of need, they're getting close to locking up a spot, I think, in the tournament. I mean, seriously, we're getting to the point now we may get 9. I was thinking we may get 8. I mean, we're always kind of confident it'd be 7 and 9. So I'm thinking 9 on the high end. I was going to go middle ground. With the way A&M, Mississippi State schedule's easing up. We'll talk about them here in a minute. Florida's getting some big wins. These teams that were kind of on the bubble are starting these 10, 11 range. Are starting to move in that 8, 9. Just how deep the league is. The deepest it's been in a long time, in my opinion. And then finally, I talked about Mississippi State. Mississippi State getting the 75-51 win at Missouri. Will Missouri win a game this year in conference? I don't know. Not scoring 51 points. Again, I say it every episode. I don't like the 8, 9, 10 guys off the bench that they had last year. You're not replacing Demoy Hodge. You're not replacing Kobe Brown. You're just not. Nick Honor, Tamani Bates, guys like that. They can't carry you. I just don't like any of the offensive guys. Noah Carter. But for Mississippi State, did what they had to do. Hubbard, another 16-point night. Shaquille Moore. I think he's key to how Mississippi State does in this back half of the schedule here. Shaq Moore is going to be key. If they can get some production out of him, Tolu Smith looks like he gets back into some playing shape. I like Mississippi State. I like Mississippi State to make the tournament. They got a very manageable schedule coming up. I mean, let's look at it real fast. If you're a Mississippi State fan, you kind of like your schedule. I mean, you just had to win Georgia, had to win Missouri. They got to get the one at home on Saturday against Arkansas. Then I think you got to get the one next week at home against Ole Miss. Then you could definitely win the game in Baton Rouge. But that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. That would be big. And then those last 4 get real. But I think if you go 5-0, you win 3 more, Arkansas at home, Ole Miss at home at LSU, I think they lock up that spot. Because you're not going to get killed losing to Kentucky, at Auburn, at A&M, and South Carolina. I mean, 2 of those teams are competing for the league title. Maybe Kentucky, they get hot here still, but I'm not counting them in that top 4. But again, Mississippi State, the schedule eases up. No one had a harder schedule right off the bat than Mississippi State. Look at it. South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, Vandy is what it is. At Florida, Auburn, at Ole Miss, at Alabama twice in the first month of conference play. I mean, come on now. Moving on, we're going to go to the SEC midweek preview here. Let's go to the standings. Here. So this is where we stand right now heading into the middle of the week. South Carolina and Alabama tied the top of the conference 9-2. Alabama would have the head-to-head with their 30-point win over South Carolina. Auburn and Tennessee essentially tied here, half-game difference at 8-3. Then we got Florida, Kentucky, Texas A&M tied at 6-4. Ole Miss, Mississippi State on each other's heels. Ole Miss 5-5, Mississippi State 5-6. LSU coming in at 4-6. Half game up on Georgia 4-7. Georgia has that head-to-head over LSU with that win last week. Arkansas 3-7, Vanderbilt 1-9, and Missouri sitting there 0-11. The sad Wednesday, if you don't know who that is, it's the opening night of the tournament on Wednesday in Nashville, the SEC tournament. Who's going to be that 11 spot? I think we kind of have our 3 spots: Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Arkansas. Yeah, I mean, Mississippi State better get their act together. They could be mentioned in this, but really probably battle between LSU and Georgia and Arkansas, really, for that last spot, depending on how Arkansas is. But just want to go through the standings as we head into the midweek. Talk about the schedule this midweek. Let's go to it right here. It's Wednesday's action. We're skipping ahead too much. Let's go to Tuesday. So we got the 6 p.m. Central Standard tip-off tomorrow. Texas A&M at Vanderbilt on ESPNU. Must win for A&M. You can't be dropping a game to Vanderbilt this late in the year. Could be sloppy. I could see it being a little sloppy. Back-to-back road games for A&M this week. They go to Nashville, then they go to Tuscaloosa. I think A&M gets the win here, though. 7 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip. LSU at Florida, SEC Network. LSU improved. Does Jalen Cook play? LSU can score the basketball, but I like the way Florida's playing right now. Florida's going to get the home win. I'm telling y'all, if Florida keeps playing well, potential Sweet 16 team, second weekend team. I like Florida, though, midweek. Then the 8 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, the game of the night tomorrow night. Ole Miss at Kentucky. Does Ole Miss make it 4 straight losses for Kentucky and Rupp? It's possible. I mean, Alan Flanagan can score. Juju Murray can score. Matthew Morrell can score. Caldwell can score at times. Ole Miss got some guys who can score. It's not overly deep, but Kentucky doesn't defend. Something tells me Kentucky gets the win, though. I like Kentucky here. little feet to the fire. I saw Cal before I got on the show, kind of having the players over, kind of getting to loosen up. Tomorrow's a lot of pressure. They don't want to go lose 4 in a row. Ole Miss has a real opportunity to kind of start tightening up that NCAA tournament lock if they can get the big road quad 1 win at Rupp Arena. It's always a big win at Rupp Arena. I don't care if they're coming off 3 losses, but I like Kentucky in a close one. I think it's going to be a close one. And then going to Wednesday night's matchups, we only got 2. We got South Carolina at Auburn. That's the game of the night, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on the SEC Network at Neville Arena. Real test for South Carolina here. They don't have to win this. They don't. But Auburn coming off a loss. I like Auburn here. Auburn's, worth 5-7 points in my opinion. Neville Arena, toughest place to play in the league right now for sure. The place will be rocking. South Carolina, a veteran team though. But I like Auburn. I like Auburn at home, coming off a loss. Just sets up a perfect recipe for Auburn to bounce back and play well. Auburn's probably one of the few teams in the country. I'm not ready to say they struggle in the road because they played Alabama close. They won at Ole Miss after being 9.5. There's a big drop-off from Auburn. Auburn's one of the few teams in the country. It's so much better at home than they are on the road. They're not bad on the road. College basketball in general this year is bad on the road. It's hard to go play. It's murderer's row, especially in the SEC this year, but around much of college basketball. But at Auburn, it's going to be a tough ask for Lamont Pearson and his team. I think Auburn, but I think it's closer than people think. But give me Auburn. And then the 8 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip, Tennessee at Arkansas. Tennessee's got to bounce back. Tennessee's got to bounce back here. I think they do. I just still don't like this Arkansas team. They've gotten some wins. Their best win this year is the A&M game at home when Tremont Mark hit the game winner at the buzzer. Tennessee's got a get right chance here. They got to go to Bud Walton Arena, take care of business. These are games like Alabama going to Baton Rouge on Saturday. You can't lose if you want to stay in the SEC championship race. You can't lose to teams. I don't care if it's on the road, as tough as it may be, against teams you're blatantly better than. Just can't happen. Wanted ahead. Yeah, you're right, Madison. They did move to number 11. But we're about to talk about the SEC power rankings here. Midweek review, net rankings. Let's go over the net review here and just for a brief minute. So we got, let me share the screen. Courtesy of our guys, Southbound Hoops here. I'm giving them credit here. This is their graphic. I think it's a clean graphic. Just wanted to give them credit here. Hoop Southbound. Yep. Move this over real fast. Sorry, guys. A little technical difficulty there. One second, guys. Sorry about that. We'll keep going right now. But the net rankings, you got Alabama coming in at number 5, Tennessee coming in at number 6, Auburn at 7, Kentucky 25th, Florida coming in at 31, Mississippi State 36, Texas A&M 37th. So you got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 SEC teams in the top. There we go. We got 7 in the top 40. Top 40. Alabama sitting there at 3-6 with quad 1 wins. Tennessee 4-5, as you can see. Auburn 2-4, Kentucky 2-5, Florida 2-7, Mississippi State 3-6. Look at Texas A&M 5. They got the most than Tennessee than Mississippi State. So I think A&M's a lock. They're in. Then South Carolina coming in with 3 at number 45th. Ole Miss coming in at 58th. They're 2-4 at quad 1s. Then we're kind of getting to the cellar dweller of the league. LSU coming in at 94th, 2-6. Georgia 95th, 1-5. Arkansas 128, 1-6. Missouri 1-6 quad 1s, but they're 153rd. And then Vanderbilt 238th, and they're 0-10 in the net rankings. I just want to talk about that briefly. And then we're going to get to the SEC power rankings. I'm going to get you out of here a little, about 10 minutes early. I got to go in another live show, but let me share this is mine now. I got a lot of flack from South Carolina fans, so I'm about to address it. Here it is. Release it today at lunch. My SEC power rankings, week 15. Start Missouri, as you can see, coming in at 14th. No brainer. They didn't win a conference game, obviously 14th. Vanderbilt right underneath them. They'd have been 14th if they didn't beat Missouri last week. Arkansas, got to be 12th. I think those are non-negotiables. I think anybody who does an SEC basketball power ranking would have it at that. LSU coming in at 11th. Yeah. I don't think that's arguable either. I don't think you can argue that. I think those bottom 4, the sad Wednesday matchups, as we would stay today, if the SEC tournament started tomorrow, we would have LSU at 11, Arkansas at 12, Vanderbilt 13th, Missouri 14th. I don't think you can argue that. Then I don't think you can argue Georgia at 10. I don't think you really can. Then Mississippi State at 9. Maybe argue that over Ole Miss. Ole Miss has the head-to-head, similar records. They still have one more matchup between each other. So I'm going to give Mississippi State at 9, give Ole Miss the nod, put them at 8. I think that's fair too. Kentucky. Some people think I probably should have Kentucky a little higher, maybe 5. Some people aren't as down on Kentucky right now. I can't put them any higher right now. I can't. I like the 6 teams in front of them. So I think Kentucky's placed perfectly right now, in my opinion. A&M has as many quad wins as anyone in the league. I like them at 6. I've had some people give me some flack or some pushback about Florida being 5 over A&M, even though A&M beat them in a 1-point win at Reed Arena last weekend. And again, I'm doing these power rankings where it would be a neutral court. Who would win on a neutral court in a series? That's the way I look at it. And this is subjective. But how I look at it is not head-to-head what the current SEC standings are. I'm talking about if we played a best-of-7, best-of-5 series on a neutral floor, this is how I'd rank them on today of February 12th, the Week 15 rankings. So I just wanted to preface that. But again, so that's the first. Kentucky at 7 is the first anyone really said anything. Then some A&M fans wanted themselves ahead, but I think on a neutral floor, Florida beat them. Again, I've said it. I've been raving Florida. I'm carrying that water right now for them. I think Florida's a legit second weekend team. If I was at a 1 seed, I don't want to see Florida in that 8-9 matchup. I don't. There's too much firepower there between Walter Clayton, Riley Kugel. They got some big guys. They got the big guys down there, Alex Condon, some guys who can really play basketball down there. Tyrese Samuel can go get after it down there. I like the makeup of what Todd Golden's team's playing. They're starting to get healthy. That's why I like them at 5 right now. Then South Carolina at 4. Let me have it, Gamecock fans. I know you're going to give me hell, but at a best-of-7, best-out-of-5 series on a neutral floor, I know you're playing the best defense in the league right now. I would take the other 3 teams in front of you. That doesn't mean this can't change. You got a real opportunity on Wednesday to go get out. I don't even think you got to win at Auburn at Neville, South Carolina fans, or for Lamont Paris if you're watching this. I don't think you have to win. I think you go play well. You saw what happened to Alabama last week. That building can overwhelm you at times. You can be playing close. Remember, Alabama's down 14. They went on a run, took a 1-point lead, and then you blink, Auburn's up 4. You can't let it get away from you. So I'm interested to see how this veteran South Carolina team with Michi Johnson, he's got to start playing better. Colin Murray-Bowles obviously has been playing well. BJ Mach, how's he going to play? Talon Cooper. How does the veteran squad handle going to a place, the most raucous, hostile environment in the league? That is Neville Arena. But right now, I think South Carolina at 4, I think they would lose a best-out-of-5, best-out-of-7 series on a neutral floor to Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama right now. Well, South Carolina fans are going to say, well, we beat Tennessee on the road. That's great. That's one game. You're at 1-0 in the series. There's still 4-6 more games, depending on how long the series is. You also lost Alabama by 30. And again, I know that was the second SEC game of the season in Tuscaloosa, but it goes both ways. You can't say we beat Tennessee, we should be number 1, and then lose to Alabama by 30 and be like, oh, never mind. Maybe Alabama should be in front of us. That's not how it works. So I would have Alabama at 3. The defense does concern me, but they're going to outscore most teams in this league. Just you worry about that matchup. That's why I don't think it's not a good matchup against Auburn or Tennessee. I was talking to one of my Alabama buddies today. He was saying, I think we'd beat Auburn in the series. I don't think Alabama would beat Auburn in the series, best out of 5 or 7. Unless Bruce Pearl just totally went blank like he did in Tuscaloosa in the first matchup and didn't feed Janai Broome. I think Janai Broome could have had 50 in the first matchup. It's not necessarily that Auburn's better than Alabama. I mean, they are this year, but it's not a good matchup for Alabama because Alabama's front court depth and front court is not very good. So I would give Auburn the edge. That's why I got Auburn at 2 over Alabama. And then Tennessee at 1. I think in a series, I trust them, especially if Sakai Ziegler's playing his best. I know they just look bad on Saturday, but that's one game, guys. It's one game. Dalton Connect's a scorer, a true basket getter they can get. In the past few years, you've had Santiago Vescovi. They've had to rely on to be their true scorer. He's not a true scorer. He's a guy that you could take some pressure off. Hey, teams are kind of doubling Dalton Connect. Maybe Zakai Ziegler's got the hot end. Hey, maybe we go kick it to the corners and Vescovi's wide open. He's best when he's that third threat to go score for you. We can kick it out to him. He's feeling it. That's where I kind of feel. In the past, he's been their scorer. That's where teams have had to lock in. So call me crazy. I think this is it. I think it's pretty fair too. So Tennessee 1, Auburn 2, Alabama 3, South Carolina 4, Florida 5, Texas A&M 6, Kentucky 7, Ole Miss 8th, Mississippi State 9, Georgia 10, LSU 11, Arkansas 12, Vanderbilt 13th, and Missouri 14 for this week's Week 15 Mach 10 SEC basketball power rankings. We'll be coming out with some SEC baseball power rankings as well. But again, we may disagree, and this is all subjective. So you keep telling me where I'm wrong. Keep telling me we're wrong. I would love to hear it. I'm open to it. I love having these dialogue. We're all fans here, guys. We're all fans. I would love to have your feedback on why I'm wrong. And South Carolina fans on Twitter already told me how much I'm wrong. But again, getting you out from under the hour. I've been going about 10 minutes over the hour. Give yourself applause right there. We covered a lot. We did. We did cover a lot. We went around the SEC. Kevin O'Sullivan getting an extension. We talked about over-unders from FanDuel coming out on the SEC. I really love Tennessee right now, over 8.5. We'll talk more in depth about that on Thursday's episode, along with the midweek review on the hardwood. We talked to Justin Rowland from CatsIllustrated.com from the Rivals Family Network on will Cal be there next year. He doesn't think so. He doesn't think John Calipari next year. 3 coaches from the SEC probably going to get a look at that. Nate Oates at Alabama, Chris Beard at Ole Miss. I don't think Mitch Barnhart goes that route. And then Bruce Pearl potentially. But I think Bruce is happy staying at Auburn, potentially giving his son Stephen Pearl that head job when he retires. Again, talked to Justin, did a phenomenal job. All things Kentucky, go give him the follow. We gave the weekend review from the SEC basketball. I gave you my SEC basketball power rankings. We went over all the net rankings. We previewed this week's matchup. Good episode, guys. Good episode. I appreciate you joining us, though, on this episode of Mach 10 Sports on the platform of the SEC Unfiltered channel as well. Go give us a follow. Like, subscribe. Tell us how we can get better on both the SEC Unfiltered channel and Mach 10. Also, go follow us if you all things college football all the time. CFB Pod. I'm about to go hop on a live channel with them. So go give us the follow there. We'll be back on Thursday night, 8 Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mach 10 Sports. You have a fantastic evening.